What is going on, gunfighters? A fun one today, I think, on OG P.C.Cs, the old school pistol caliber carbines. The pistol caliber carbines before P.C.Cs were cool. I'm talking the older 357, 44 Magnum, 45 Long Colt, etc. That's what we're going to talk about today, a pretty fun episode. Before we get into that, how long have you been listening to Gunfighter Life? I want you to think about that. I am humbled that you listen. How long have you been listening? If you have listened for some time, how much money have you spent on gun stuff? And I want you to discount the ammo, because ammo is important, training is important. Discard the training cost and the ammo cost, the cost you spent on professional gunfighting training and ammunition. How much have you just spent on guns and random gun-related stuff? If that number is greater than $1, perhaps you should show some appreciation for the podcast and value the podcast. A value for value exchange. Now, the podcast is different because I give it to you for free, and I expect people to step up and say, hey, I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate your time. Here's something to show my appreciation. Hopefully you like, subscribe, leave a review of the podcast. But a big way you can support is by going to Patreon, becoming a patron. Again, if you've given any amount of money to gun stuff on Amazon, your favorite gun dealer, gun store, on non-mission critical stuff, again, not ammunition, not training, but whatever amount that is, what's $1 or $10 or $20 compared to that? For that much, a month, you can become a patron of the show. And I mostly want you to do that to contribute, but also, you get a lot of cool insider content there. I am right now on or pretty close to the American-Canadian border up here in northern Idaho. I may be in Montana later tonight or tomorrow, I'm not sure. Such is the life of a nomad. But I recently put in a really cool bug-out location right on the border. I share my actual real-world bug-out locations with the coordinates for the patrons. Maybe if the peanut butter and chocolate hits the fan, I'll see you there. But I do all kinds of stuff on there for the patrons. Hopefully they see the value in that. You can become a part of that tribe, an active member, instead of just a passive listener. Consider becoming a patron. That's it. Since that was so lengthy, I'm going to forego the lengthy bio. We're just going to get into talking about some cool, old-school pistol caliber carbines. Now, there are some really, really old pistol caliber carbines. I'm not talking about the original. I'm not talking about like 4440, 3220. Those are really cool, but I doubt many people are shooting those today regularly. They're probably shooting those, if they are shooting them, as part of a collection, as part of a historical thing. Not a lot of people running around, I don't think, with, a 4440 as their truck gun, as their camp carbine. I could be wrong, but I think mostly we're talking about cartridges that are still popular today. So that's what we're mostly going to talk about. But still the old school, and I guess I should define what that is. I would consider the new school, if we're going to compare and contrast, the new school is like the AR type or direct blowback type, like a High Point or a AR style N9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 45 ACP. I would consider those the new school of pistol caliber carbines. I'm considering the old school largely, maybe not exclusively, but largely manually operated, meaning lever action, pump action, things like that, in pistol calibers. That is the difference, I think. That's where I'm going to focus today. Now, there are many, but I'm going to stick to the main ones. I think first, as I would encourage you guys, when you look at a new gun, don't just get a gun or a different gun because it's cool or because it's neat or because it has a shiny brass receiver. Consider what you want it to do first, and that usually will tell you what caliber that you want. I'm not going to bury the lead. I think the most versatile caliber in these old school P.C.Cs, calibers, because they match together, is going to be 38 Special 357. Much like the revolvers and some lever actions can have feeding issues. I mean, and some revolvers can jam depending on the type of ammo and the tolerances. But usually, a lever action chambered in 38 Special 357 will shoot both. If it's chambered in 357, it'll also shoot 38 Special. I think this is your most versatile as far as a good crossover defensive hunting of both small game, medium game, and large game. Personal defense, personal protection. I think it, power to weight ratio, I think it is the best all around. I'm not going to bury the lead. So I would really encourage you to look at a lever action gun or a pump action gun, although those are less common, like the old Colt Lightnings or the clones of those by some Italian makers, or I do believe Taurus Rossi made one. But usually you're talking about a lever action. A lever action gun in 38 357 is, besides the shotgun, because I think the shotgun is absolutely more versatile, besides the shotgun, perhaps the most versatile gun you can own. It's got a reasonable rate of fire. It has a lot of flexibility as far as ammo. I talked about this in Quiet Without a Suppressor episode, which you may want to go back and listen to. But Quiet Without a Suppressor, you can load totally legally, not skirting the ATF, not running afoul of the ATF, not going straight up Ruby Ridge, but you can legally, totally legally, load heavy for caliber, relatively fast burning pistol powder, which means it'll all burn up inside the full length rifle barrel, heavy for caliber loads, and 38 Special that are absolutely quiet and quieter than most rifles are with a suppressor, without a suppressor, just because of the nature of physics. You don't need a suppressor if all of that powder has burned long before that bullet exits the barrel. That's kind of what the suppressor does. It captures that excess gas, and instead of it all exiting at once and making that boom, it dissipates it. Well, if it's already dissipated when it leaves the barrel, then you're good to go. You would be amazed at how quiet a heavy for caliber, let's say 38 Special or 44 Special, but let's stick to the 38, like 180 grain, and these are hand loads, you'd have to hand load these, but 180 grain, low on the powder charge, faster burning powder for this would be better, out of a carbine length barrel. Absolutely quiet. You can go all the way from that, which is a good clandestine quiet round, if you're somewhere where you can legally do it and you just want to take out groundhogs in the backyard because they're eating up your garden. And it's legal to do so, but you don't want to disturb your neighbors. Or any other situation that you might encounter where a quiet, clandestine round would be good. And absolutely still a deadly round. You know, this is not an airsoft gun. It is still absolutely deadly and far more deadly than usually a 22. And 22s are quite deadly. You can go all the way from the mild to that quiet round to fairly common, cheap, inexpensive. Let's say just lead 148 grain semi-wad cutters or wad cutters for great, accurate target practice for small game. You know, a 38 semi-wad cutter is absolutely good on small game. Absolutely. And I'm talking up to what I would call medium small game. You know, coyotes and down. Coyotes, coons, raccoons, possums, fox, and the old classic fox in the hen house. Trust me, a 38 Special wad cutter, if you do your part and put the bullet where it needs to go, will absolutely do its part. Groundhogs, woodchucks, marmots, whatever you call them in your neck of the woods, whatever vernacular you use for those large rodents, it'll kill them. And again, it's a cheap, inexpensive, very accurate round. And you can go up to the 38 Special Plus P. It's kind of an intermediary. It's decent out of a small snub-nosed revolver. It's even better, obviously, out of a rifle. And for those that don't understand this, for all practical handguns, you're leaving some energy on the table. In a cartridge, you have potential energy and you have realized energy, kinetic energy. Now, again, in most practical handguns, we're talking like a 5-inch barrel or less, you're leaving some of that on the table. Some of that powder will be unburnt, meaning not all of that cartridge's potential energy got turned into realized kinetic energy. much, much more, if not all of that powder is burned in a rifle or carbine. That is why you will see much, much different ballistics out of these rounds out of a rifle than you will out of a handgun, because not all of that powder, which is the store of that potential energy, is burned inside the barrel of, let's say, a snub-nose revolver. You're leaving a lot of that energy on the table. It's not realized. But you realize a lot more to the potential of that cartridge in a carbine. With that said, 38 Special Plus P out of the carbine is a good round. It would be a decent defensive round, but you've got the weight of that revolver, or you've got the weight of that carbine versus the revolver. Why not step it up to 357 Magnum? 357 Magnum out of a carbine is not punishing. It's going to be a little bit louder, but certainly not louder than most center fire traditional rifle rounds like a .223 out of a similar sized barrel. 357 Magnum is absolutely a fantastic personal defense round. It's good out of a handgun. It's absolutely better if you are judicious in your ammunition selection out of a carbine. You don't want... Okay, so let me back up. I guess I'm going deeper in this than I thought that I was going to, but I think it's important. Hollow point ammunition is a balancing act. It is a fine line between penetration and expansion. They have an inverse relationship. The more frontal diameter that a given round has of the same velocity, same mass, same sectional density, blah, 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 all other things being equal, the greater frontal area, the less it will penetrate. Meaning, if that hollow point expands too rapidly, it will not penetrate as much as you would like. A lot of 357 Magnum hollow point ammunition is designed for handgun velocities. And as we just discussed, you will get much more velocity out of a carbine. So you should be judicious. You may want to go, I'm not saying you can't use a hollow point, but you may look carefully at your hollow points. You may decide to go with something else, like a lever evolution, which is a polymer type tip, or you may want to go with just a soft nose, but not a hollow point, like a semi-jacketed soft point round out of the carbine. Again, because you're getting much more velocity and you want to balance that. And I would especially go with those type of rounds. After all, they're kind of designed for that. The soft point or the polymer tip round, like the lever evolution, if you're going to hunt medium to large game. And 357 Magnum absolutely is good for medium and large game out of a revolver. And as we aforementioned, it's only going to have more capabilities, assuming you're judicious in your bullet construction selection in a carbine. For those reasons, I think the 38 Special 357 Magnum is absolutely one of the best, most flexible carbines, period. One of the most flexible guns outside the world of the shotgun, period. End of sentence. Okay. It's not your only option, and that doesn't mean that it's necessarily best for you. The other big boy in the room, the other pachyderm in the room, if there are two elephants in this room, the other pachyderm will be the 44 Special 44 Magnum. Bigger. Bigger's not always better, but bigger is bigger. And bigger in this case absolutely is more powerful. I like a 357 Magnum, but there is no argument that the 44 Magnum is absolutely more powerful in any metric you want to use. Heavier bullets at the same velocity, even sometimes heavier bullets at a greater velocity, or similar weight bullets at a much higher velocity. Like you can load 180s in a 357 Magnum, and you can load 180s in a 44 Magnum, and you will have some screaming velocity. Yeah, so you can go down to the 180 grain, and you can go all the way up to 300 and something grain. I remember loading as a kid, one of our go-to loads was a 300, and I think it was 300. This was going back over 20 years when I first started hand loading, but I think it was a 310 grain gas check semi-wad cutter over some old Hercules powder that I don't remember. But that absolutely will kill anything in North America, up to and including your biggest, nastiest bears, out of a handgun. If you do a hard cast semi-wad cutter and push it to its maximum potential out of a 44 Magnum, absolutely. In fact, many people that carry handguns in Alaska for big brown bears or in polar bear country for polar bear defense, absolutely, they will carry a 44 mag. And that load will do fine out of a handgun. And out of a rifle, as we aforementioned, even better. Now, here's where it's not as versatile, I don't think, though. Absolutely, it will be a decent personal protection round. But I think a little bit too much. 357 Magnum is absolutely a great personal defense round. The 44 Magnum is more powerful. That doesn't make it a better personal defense round. And I don't care how good you control recoil, if you reduce it, you control it better. So two similar size and weight lever action carbines, one in 357, one in 44 Magnum, if you were to say take those to a steel challenge, which in my opinion is one of the best, most analogous competition disciplines to a gunfight, because they're quick, it's dirty, it's not that many targets. Usually gunfights in real life are not like John Wick. You're not running around doing backflips, doing the car technique, doing speed reloads. It's usually you have to go right now and neutralize targets right now, and then it's over very quickly. You take something like that to a steel challenge match, and you take an equally skilled steel challenge shooter and you give them the same thing in 357 and 44 Magnum, I think absolutely they're going to shoot faster with the 357 Magnum. I don't care how good you control recoil. If there's less of it, you can go faster. For that reason, I think you're giving up a little bit on the personal protection aspect. Unless you talk about like longer range stuff, but in that case, you probably don't want either one of these. Also, I think you give up a little bit on the versatility on the low end. And here's what I mean by that. 44 Special absolutely is a thing. 44 Special absolutely will kill those medium small game animals that we talked about. Your fox, your coyote. But I don't think it's going to kill them any better than a 38 Special semi-wad cutter. That will absolutely kill those dead. And if you didn't, it was your shot placement, probably not the round because it wasn't capable. May there be some situation where that extra .429 diameter bullet hit a vital organ where the .357 diameter bullet didn't. Yeah, that may occur at some point, but it's too minute to even worry about. So I think you give up a little bit on the small game. You can absolutely still load heavy for caliber 44 Specials. Like we talked about, if you went and loaded up that 300 and something grain bullet, which you absolutely can do in a 44 Special load, a published load, but with faster burn rate powder on the low end of the published charge, you will get a quiet round. But you can get that with less with the 38 Special. And I'm not saying one's better than the other. I just don't think it's as versatile. And here's the big reason I don't think this is as versatile. 44 Special is a thing. Just like 38 Special is a thing, but 38 Special is far, far more common than 44 Special, which means economy of scale, it's more affordable. You're going to be able to practice more, especially even if you hand load, but especially if you buy factory ammo, you're almost certainly going to be able to find, unless it's some weird anomaly because they've been on the shelf too long where it's on sale, you're almost certainly going to be able to find more affordable 50 round boxes of 38 Special than you are 44 Special. So if you want to actually train with this gun and use it and have fun with it, which is important to be familiar and well acquainted and well equipped, well trained with your firearm, you're going to be able to do that more affordably with 38 Special. So let's say your monthly ammo budget is $100. What is that? 1/20th of a Cougarand, depending on when you listen to this for inflation. You're going to be able to buy more of that 38 Special ammo and or components than you are the 44 Special ammo and or components. Again, unless there's some weird anomaly. So that's one of the big reasons I don't think it's as versatile, but also it's still a really good combo. And if you're in really big, nasty bear country and or something like it, or you just want a bigger, heavier bullet, then 44 Special 44 Magnum is probably your jam. You're probably going to gravitate towards that. There is another. I don't know if it's as big. I don't know if it's an elephant, let's say a rhinoceros in the room, because a rhinoceros, what's the plural of rhinoceros? Rhinoceri? Rhinoceroses? They're not as big as elephants, but it's still a big one in the room. 45 long Colt. I don't think 45 long Colt gets the love that it deserves. 45 long Colt normally is not as potent as 44 Magnum. However, it can be. It absolutely can meet, and you might even argue exceed 44 Magnum performance in a gun that'll handle it. And these well-made carbines can handle it. In fact, I have reloading manuals. I'm not going to share specific reloading data on the show, but I have reloading manuals. I have an old Hornady one that I quote from all the time, just to give rough numbers. And that 45 long Colt, it'll have loadings just for the Marlin lever actions, so that you can load it hotter. I think usually factory ammo is not loaded as hot because they don't want you to throw it in an old 1800s Colt single action Army, which I believe was the first gun chambered in that round, and blow it up. But if you have a modern carbine, you absolutely can load it up hotter with published data. You're not like going off the charts, you're not, loading up some crazy train round that's going off the rails. Absolutely published data, and you can get a 45 long Colt to very respectable ballistics. Why might you choose that over either one of the other two options? Well, here's a big one. If you reload, it's, I think, a more common diameter bullet. There's a lot more rounds that use the .452 diameter, which is what this is, versus the .429 of the 44 Magnum. 44 Magnum is not actually 44 caliber, it's .429, making it 42.9, or roughly 43 caliber, and 45 is a little bit bigger. So there's a bigger difference there between the 44 and the 45 than you may think just by hearing the 44-45. But there's a lot more cartridges that take the .452 diameter bullet. A real common one is 45 ACP, right? The 1911 round, and many other cartridges. So if you reload and you want commonality of components, the fact that that takes .452 diameter bullets absolutely might be a thing for you. You may decide you want to stick with 45 because you already have a stockpile of 45 caliber rounds, or you may decide you just like the 45 long Colt better loaded to its full potential, and you can get the, what are commonly referred to now with the advent of cowboy action. And I'm not going to pretend to know all about cowboy action. That is one of the few disciplines I have never competed in. But I do know that they have fairly mild cowboy action loads. So although you don't get like a common, less powerful round that'll fit in there, there are certainly older, more obscure ones that'll fit in there, but you don't get that. But what you do get are fairly mild rounds and the cowboy loads. And those are fairly common. You can just go to the store and get those. And especially if you reload, 45 long Colt is just kind of a nice round to reload. It's a straight walled case. So are the other ones, but it's a .452 diameter bullet, economy of scale. They're fairly affordable. There's all kinds of loadings. That round has been around. And has been fairly popular for well over 100 years. There's all kinds of load data from mild to wild. I'm sure, I've never done it, but I'm sure you can absolutely load down and make a quiet version of the 45 long Colt out of a carbine. I actually did have a 45 long Colt lever action carbine that I sold at one point, and I guess I don't regret it because I got a gun that I was actually going to use in the real world as a kind of more relevant gun. But I do kind of miss that gun. I kind of wish I had just waited longer and saved up the money and kept that gun, but I didn't. But it was a good gun, and it would have been a good medium large game hunting gun. And I guess I'm not the most sentimental of guys, but one of my really good friends, he gave me this gun and I gave him another gun, and he shortly thereafter passed away. He passed away after I got rid of the gun, but in light of that, if I had known that, I might have kept that gun. But anyway, I do have some experience with the 45 long Colt and reloading it. It's very easy to reload for. It's a good choice. We talk mostly about lever actions, and some good things about the lever action. They have a reasonable rate of fire. Are they as fast as a semi-auto? No, absolutely not. Are they as fast as a full auto, like an MP5? No, absolutely not. But you probably can't have the MP5, and if you can, you're probably not considering, am I getting an MP5 or am I getting a 357 lever action carbine, right? Those are two different worlds. As much as I like the MP5 or the semi-auto SP5, the lever action carbine, again, more flexible. Since you manually operate it, you can go from a very mild round to a very hot round. So that will let you run those mild, quiet 38 specials all the way up to the very hot 357 Magnums or whatever other caliber. So you got a lot more flexibility in the cartridge itself because you manually operate it. And it's still a reasonable rate of fire. Another reason might be that you live in a jurisdiction where shall not be infringed is interpreted differently than I interpret it. So you may not be able to have a semi-auto AR-15 pistol caliber carbine in your truck with a 30 round Glock mag, but you absolutely could have a lever action 357. And honestly, I don't think that one has a big advantage over the other. Yeah, the other one's got higher capacity, higher rate of fire, but the 357 is going to have better ballistics round per round. And they have a decent amount of capacity. It differs depending on the model, but if you haven't solved your gunfight problem in, let's say, 10 rounds of 357 Magnum, you might not be solving it with the 11th or 12th or 31st. Okay, that's just a reality. They have a reasonable rate of fire. Also, if you want a good crossover hunting gun, certainly you can kill deer with 9mm and 40 and 45, because I have killed a lot of animals with just normal handguns. I have killed a lot of deer with just normal handguns. I've been blessed to do that. I do it mostly because I like the challenge. I've killed more deer with those just normal pistol rounds than I honestly can remember. And I'm not saying that to brag. God has blessed me to do many things in life, which you've probably heard if you've listened to the bio. But I've killed a lot of deer like that. And those rounds will absolutely do it. But if I'm actually trying to put meat on the table, not doing it for the challenge, not like I already have my deer in the freezer and I'm just for fun seeing if I can get and challenge myself and get another animal with a handgun, with my carry gun, absolutely it's a better choice. If you say you're hungry, your family's hungry, you're going out to feed them, you can have a 9mm P.C.C. or a 357 Magnum P.C.C. I'm absolutely going to take the 357 Magnum P.C.C. It's a better tool for the job. So it's a better crossover round. So if you wanted a really good, again, not as flexible as a shotgun, but a really flexible crossover gun, a truck gun, a camp carbine, where you can maybe be a little bit quiet, whether it's in camp or in the suburbs, or you just want to be clandestine for whatever reason you decide, and you don't want to go to federal prison, and you don't want to pay the $200 tax stamp, then you absolutely could go this route, and you could have a good crossover gun. You could keep it loaded with whatever you wanted. 357 Magnum, 158 grain, semi-jacketed soft points in your truck, and it would be a fantastic truck gun. Or the 44 Magnum with, whatever, 240 grain semi-jacketed soft points. It'd be a good all-around truck gun. It would be a good all-around. It wouldn't be my first choice, wouldn't be my second choice, but it would be a good all-around. Peanut butter and chocolate hits the fan, you got your one gun, especially if you're pairing it with a handgun, which I guess we should touch on. That's another reason I think the 357 38 Special is a good choice, because there are a lot of really good common and, let's say, normal practical sized handguns in 357 38 Special. One of my go-to smaller carry guns, and that should tell you something, it's it's when I'm not carrying a full-size fighting handgun, which I normally do. But when I step down and I go to like a pocket gun, one of my most common ones is 357 38 Special Smith & Wesson J-frame, to tell you how small you can get these guns. You could even go the trifecta, right? You could have one of these carbines in 357 38 Special. You could have a good mid-size all-around, which you might argue, just like the carbine, a good mid-size revolver, let's say between 3 and 5 inch barrel, 4 being the most common, and 338 357 is probably the most flexible of all handguns. It's a good crossover for hunting, it's a good crossover for defense, they're reliable. So you might make that argument. So you might go the carbine and then a mid-size revolver, say a Colt Python, and not because it's cool in The Walking Dead, because it's actually a good practical, really good handgun. Or a Smith & Wesson, Model 66, Combat Magnum, or anything like that you want. There have been a ton made. And then you might get a J-frame in the same thing. 357 Magnum 38 Special. So if something happens and you are doing something where you just want a little small gun, you have that in your pocket. Or if maybe you're just openly carrying the revolver and the carbine, but you want a very small backup gun. Heck, they even make Derringers in those calibers. So you could have the trifecta all in the same caliber. That's pretty cool. You can do that to a lesser extent with the other calibers. Obviously they make plenty of handguns in 44 Magnum, but despite what Dirty Harry might have you believe, you're probably not concealed carrying, a Smith & Wesson Model 29. Maybe you do, but I don't know anybody that does in real life. It's a big gun. Anyway, getting a little off topic. Let's go back to the pistol caliber carbines, and let's talk about brand. And I'm not sponsored. That's one of the reasons, if you enjoy the show and you're not, you enjoy me not just saying, hey, this next cool new widget came out and it's 5% better than the widget that came out the year before, and it's the next hot caliber and the next hot brand. You gotta have it. It's in multicam Cerakote, man. You're not cool unless you have this. I'm not that guy. If you appreciate that, there's no sponsors here. This is sponsored by viewers like you. So consider stepping up and being a patron. Anyway, brands that aren't paying me any money to recommend or not recommend on this. There's a couple of big ones. Winchester, absolutely awesome. Winchester makes really good, slick pistol caliber carbines. They're model 1892s. I had one. I had that 45 long Colt. It was a trapper. It was an angle eject, meaning you could mount a good optic on the top. And that's a thing. A lot of these, if you want to mount an optic, the Winchesters, the top eject, it's not impossible, but it's a lot harder to mount an optic. So that's something to consider. If you just want iron sights, there's nothing wrong with that. These can be crazy accurate with iron sights. Unlike your more powerful centerfire rifle cartridges, where you get into all kinds of strange barrel harmonics, and these are not going to be free-floated barrels, that can have a lot more detrimental effect in a high-velocity rifle round. The pistol caliber carbines tend to suffer less from that. The barrels just don't move as much. There's less going on there. There's less to affect the accuracy. You can get a very, very accurate pistol caliber carbine like this in a lever action gun for a reasonable price. You could do it in a centerfire, but there's a lot more going on there. But the Winchesters, they do make the angle eject. I know because I owned one. But most of their just traditional ones, if you just want a light, handy, quick handling carbine in one of these pistol calibers with iron sights, and you don't mind blued steel and walnut, Winchester is probably your best bet. Especially if you want that heirloom quality, one that is going to last you, and assuming the peanut butter and chocolate doesn't hit the fan, you could pass that down for generations. And it would still be treasured. It would still probably be, assuming your kids are into guns, grandkids are into guns, it'll still be one of the guns they really like to take out and enjoy shooting. They're fantastic guns. They're great quality. Even the new ones, I don't think that Winchester has suffered the quality control problems. I'm talking about Winchesters made by Winchester, not some of the cheaper ones they import made in Turkey or whatever. But actual Winchester rifles made by Winchester, I think they have not suffered the quality control issues that Remington has. So they're a good choice. They do make some that you can mount optics on, but I think less common. Your other big player is Marlin. Now, Marlin had some woes because it got bought up by Remington. Now, it got bought again by Ruger, and they seem to be doing a very good job of quality control. From what I know from the guns I've handled, I haven't owned one, but they seem to be very good. So you have that option. And Marlin, in days of yore, and I assume shortly now, they've made them in stainless steel. So if you're looking for a stainless steel gun, they're a perhaps better choice.